Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the book Refuge and welcome to week 14 of 2023 and my reading wrap up. So if this is randomly the first video of mine that you're stumbling across, I am a romance booktuber and today is my 5-year anniversary on BookTube, which is crazy. I haven't always been completely devoted to romance reads like I am now, but it is really crazy that on this day in 2018, I started this channel with holding the camera with my own hand and doing the newbie booktuber tag. Like, life is strange. Life is strange. But anyway, we're going to get into what I read this week because I'm pretty proud of myself. I was checking off quite a lot of books that are on some of my year-long TBR type of thing, and we'll get into that, as well as I really plugged in with the audios. I was really in a crafting mood again this week. If you guys follow along with me, you'll know that I've gotten into crafting kind of since November last year. I've always been pretty crafty. It's not like it's brand new, but I've gotten into sewing and cross stitching and recently some journaling and scrapbooking, and audiobooks are the perfect partner for that, right? And so I was able to get through quite a few audiobooks this week, as well as some new and upcoming releases. Also, you'll notice when I start to go through these, there's 4 or 5 of these books that are in a vlog I recently did, which I'll have linked up here. I don't share too many vlogs on the main channel much. A lot of them go to my Patreon because my vlogs are exclusive to Patreon. But because I had some arcs and new releases to read, I thought that that would be kind of the perfect format to do that. And it felt nice to share it with everybody. And if you liked that and you're interested in my Patreon, that's always linked down below. So speaking of my Patreon, before we move on, we do have a new patron to welcome, my wonderful friend Jo from Not So Average Jo. She was kind enough to be supporting my Patreon. So if you haven't checked out Jo, you definitely should. We have both been around BookTube for a long time. She took a little bit of a hiatus for a while, but now she's back and she's sassy and fantastic, and you should check her out. So let's get into these books, right? The very first one that I got through, and I'm going to say this quite a few times, right? This one's in the vlog, but I'll give you kind of my more abridged, spoiler-free thoughts about this one. I don't go into spoilers because this book isn't out yet, but I do kind of go through my, it's a reading vlog, so my process of reading it. So I read Bewitched by Laura Thalassa. Bloom was kind enough to send me an advanced reader copy of this, and I was very excited. I've read quite a few Laura Thalassa, and I enjoy her. So this one is being billed as new adult. Our heroine is a witch, and she's trying to get into what's called a coven, but it's basically witch college. So this one is billed as kind of new adult. Now, the thing with this, though, is that all magic in this world has a cost. And for witches, it is usually a physical cost. There's some witches that they go blind very young because using their magic has taken their sight. There's a cost to it, which I thought was really interesting. Our heroine specifically, the cost for her using magic is that the magic takes pieces of her memory. So she has very elaborate systems to help her, stay on top of everything. And she doesn't know what she's forgotten either. So doesn't make her to be the best friend or someone to rely on. And when she is trying to get into this coven, they're like, this seems irresponsible of us to bring you in because you're going to be using magic almost daily at school. What is even going to be left of you if you do this? And she's very insistent that she needs to be involved in it. And they give her some stipulations before they would have her in. She needs to find a familiar because they believe that that could maybe help offset some of the costs. So she needs to find an animal familiar. Not every witch has one, but they're suggesting that she try to find one. And then she also needs to go, sorry, there's my notes over there. She needs to go on a vision quest type event, to, discover her purpose and things like that. I don't know. It's kind of vague about why they want her to do this. So she's like, okay, I'm going to do this. So she books a trip, and when she happens to be on the airplane on the way to this place, her plane starts getting pulled down. There's something that she hears in her head, she hears this voice in her head calling her my empress, my queen. And she doesn't know who this is or what it is, but the plane is being pulled down. She's able to use her magic and help land the plane safely. The plane is like wrecked, but everyone is safe. As someone who has looked into like aviation history a lot, that's impossible. So it's definitely magical. And then she feels pulled into this jungle, and she comes across this cursed tomb of Memnon. And he believes that she is his long dead wife, and also is the reason that he has been locked away for 2,000 years. And she's just like, dude, I don't know who you are, what this is. I don't know what's going on. And so then we fast forward to her going back. She is now able to get into this college. But she didn't lose Memnon, is basically the point. And now there are witches who are turning up dead, and she's missing pieces of her memory, because she's always missing pieces of her memory. And could she or Memnon be involved with these witches going missing? So that's the premise. That was a lot. I probably could have just read the synopsis on the back, but very intriguing. Lots to be exciting about this. Again, I don't want to spoil this for people. Laura Thalassa is very popular. Lots of people are going to want to read her no matter what my opinion is. I've had hits and misses with her. My favorite is the Bargainer trilogy. I really, really love both of those the characters so much. I've also read Pestilence. I read it way back when Pestilence was the only book out in the series. And I've read her like Queen of All That Dies series or whatever. And I will say that Memnon, as of now, feels kind of like the love interest in the Queen of All That Dies, where he may be like a true villain. We don't like see him doing tons of the villainous stuff yet. He mostly just wants revenge on her, but he also really wants her. And she's like, I'm not your dead wife. She says that so many times. And I think that could be interesting. Now, my issues with this, without going too spoilery, is that it is extremely repetitive. This is a pretty big book for what I'm told. I believe this is going to be a trilogy. That's what I've heard people say. For sure, there's at least another book, because this ends on a cliffhanger. There will be another one. And this book just felt very repetitive. Like, there are arguments that Memnon and Selene have, and they have them over and over again, coming to the same, like, stop every time. And I don't know whether that's because of her memory loss, because she doesn't remember the stuff she doesn't remember. But she's so pig-headed about certain things. And I'm like, you literally are missing chunks of your memory. So, maybe you should be careful about what you just blow off as not being possible. You're a witch. There's magic that exists. How can you not believe there's something more going on with the fact that this guy can, like, communicate with you? He can speak to your mind from the beginning, and he feels drawn to you. Like, it's magic. Like, what do you think is going on? So the heroine, for being a witch who does magic, really wasn't believing in a lot of the facts that were being laid out in front of her, and that got extremely frustrating. And one of the weaknesses I've seen the most in books by this author is that I tend to be very frustrated with the heroine, and even if there is a evil hero that she loves, I at some point need the heroine to get on board with them. And granted, that wasn't going to be possible, like, in this one, just because of how it's set up, but Selene definitely has that vibe of someone who is going to drag her feet every inch along the way, and that was very frustrating. So I ranted about this more than I said that I would, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out there. If you're going to read Laura Thalassa, you're going to read her. I was fascinated by the magic cost and the setup. I was intrigued by some of the stuff we do find out about Memnon and his long dead wife. There is an animal familiar that I loved. I love the animal familiar that is here. But there was also just not enough stuff explained. And again, is that because we're in first-person POV and the heroine forgets stuff? Maybe. But then our author doesn't put us in the position to figure some of this stuff out either. And that's extremely frustrating. And then in the people who have read this, like one of my friends who I've talked with, and one of my, and reading some Goodreads reviews when I wrote my own, this isn't so much a cliffhanger as, we don't even make it, up to the cliff. For how much merry-go-rounding we do in this book, I needed a bigger reveal than we get. Basically, the end of this book is our heroine has a revelation, and then doesn't tell us what it is. So, like, it'd be different if, like, we get the revelation and then there's the cliffhanger and we're going to find out what happens next. The heroine has had a realization and then it cuts off. So, like, even though we're in her head, we should be getting the revelation too. We're with her. I've been in her brain this whole time. And it just, she's like, aha, and then it stops. And for maybe having to wait a year for any more, like, the things that I liked about it, it's really difficult to like want to keep going, and will I still be interested in a year from now? Okay, we're 10 minutes in. Time to move on. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's like a 1 on the spice scale. There's only a lot of teasing and lady blue balls that happen in this book, so just want to tell you that. Okay, then I read a fantasy world that I am absolutely intrigued with and loving, and that is 6 Scorch Roses by Carissa Broadbent. This is the novella in the Nyaxia series, so this is book 1.5. It's about characters we've never met or even heard about before in The Serpent and the Wings of Night. But we will see them in the next one. So that's why Carissa said, like, you could read this one before you read The Serpent and the Wings of Night to maybe see if you like this world, or you can read it after that one before we read the next book, which is coming out next week, I think, is when we're getting it. So yeah, whichever you want, you can read it either place. You don't have to have read one before that. Like, honestly, you can, because it's completely its own story. But by the end of this, I know how it's going to connect to the next one, okay? And so our heroine in this one is Lilith. Our hero, his name is Vale, and he's a vampire. And our heroine is kind of like a scientist. She is looking for a way for certain diseases to be healed, and she has a hint that vampire blood could be able to do that. And so she makes a deal with Vale that every so many weeks she will come and take a vial of his blood, some of his blood, and use it for her experiments. And they agree to that. I don't want to spoil anything else, but like that's the setup for that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I wish that it was even more than it was. But again, I have a feeling like I know we're going to see these characters later. And so this was really just kind of like their setup. And then, like, you know, it is like a full love story. Like, they're together at the end of this. But we could have had more of them. I would have been okay with that, but it was great. And I'm very excited for the Ashes and the Star Cursed King. It's going to be great. So I gave this 4 stars, and it was 1.5 on the spice scale. And there is a tempted essay, and there is illnesses happening in this one. Then I listened to the audiobook of Lady Wallflower by Scarlett Scott. This was continuing her like, is it Scandalous Ladies series or something? I don't know. This one, our heroine is Jo, and she has been writing, well, actually she isn't writing anything, but she's delivering the pamphlets to their printer, and their printer for the Ladies Society in this, his name is Mr. Decker. And when she delivers it, she accidentally has some of her personal stuff like in with the delivery. And one of those includes this list with all these salacious and naughty things that she wants to be able to do. And Decker decides that he's going to kind of blackmail her into doing the things on this list with him. And so he kind of threatens to, like, tell that she wrote this so that she will spend time with him and do these things with him. So yeah, this was really cute. I didn't like it quite as much as I liked the first one, but it still had a really good connection between these two. And I love the narrators. This is a dual narrated historical romance. And I really, really enjoyed that. So I gave this one 4 stars, and it was a 3 on the spice scale because she has a lot of fun things on her list that she wants to try, and I really loved that. And this has a trigger warning for loss of a parent. So, all right, then I had Travis by Mia Sheridan. This book has already been out for, I think, a couple years now. Yeah, it's already been out for a couple of years now, but a bunch of Mia Sheridan's books are getting done with Bloom Books, and as you'll see, Bloom kindly sends me quite a few influencer copies of things. And so I had never read Travis yet, and this reprint of it was getting released now. And so I was like, hey, I'll do it, because also there's already an audiobook for this. So I bought the audiobook of Travis. This takes place in the same town with the same people as, well, not the same couple, but like Archer. He is the mayor of this small town, Pelion. Look, I even got a cute little like postcard Pelion lake there. And Travis, this is 6 years later. It's 6 years later. So we definitely see Archer and his wife and their kids a lot, which is so cute. And Travis is still the sheriff. He's now in his 30s, and he is still feeling like a little bit lost. Like he doesn't, like he is the sheriff. He loves that job, but he doesn't feel like he has as much purpose as he would like to have. This also begins with him finding out that his girlfriend had cheated on him, and she was with this younger man in bed when he showed up at her home for like a surprise hello. And then, to make matters interesting, there's this new girl in town who says she's just there for the season, and she's working at the country club, making like the drinks there and everything. She works at the smoothie bar at this club, and she's this like health nut. She's really cute, and she's also like a green thumb. She loves plants. She's actually like rescuing some plants when she almost gets in a car accident. She's like trying to stop it from falling, and that's what Travis pulls her over for the first time, which was kind of cute. But then, so her name is Haven. When he runs into her, because what happens is his condo or his home like gets flooded, and so he has to stay at the only bread and breakfast in town that has a room available until his apartment gets fixed. And it turns out that Haven and her brother, who happens to be the young, barely legal guy who was caught with his girlfriend, are staying. So the home wrecker and his sister are also at this bed and breakfast. And so Travis, he's not going to do anything to this kid, but he definitely is like keeping his eye on him. And Haven is like, please don't do anything to my brother. And so it turns out that like Haven and her brother travel seasonally. They're kind of like nomads living their life. They have a very like kind of tragic backstory, which I'll mention when I get to the trigger warnings. And so they've just decided that it's best to always be traveling, because if you don't get too attached, you can't be hurt by anyone, you know, that kind of mentality. And so, yeah, this is just a small town, summer fling kind of romance, but I also really love it because Haven and Travis really become friends. And then when they have this fling, she's like, just remember, I'm leaving at the end of the season, you know, don't fall for me. And he needs to find some reasons to maybe make her stay. This is also like a redemption story in a way, right? Because Travis was a pain in the ass in Archer's voice. He's Archer's half-brother. He had a lot of jealousy to do with Archer. But I love seeing him and Archer in this, and just the relationship they have now. And so because of the ease of their relationship now, like I didn't really need a super like redemption for Travis, because it's clear to me how much Archer and his wife love him. And that's kind of a good enough reason to like love him too. But he definitely still does make some mistakes. Some of his past is still there to butt up against. And I thought that was cool to see how he grew. So I gave this one 4 stars, and it was a 2 on the spice scale. And it has a contact warning of drug use by a parent, like abuse by a parent, and then like death of multiple parents actually, because Travis's parent and the heroine's parents are gone. So then I read a novella called Stonehearts by S.E. Wendell. This was one that it popped up in my Instagram feed, and I was like, I want this. So as soon as it released, I snagged it. And this is a fae monster romance is what it said. So there's our fae, who's the heroine, whose name is Karis, and she is a fae, and so she has wings, and she has like pink tinted skin. She's very like beautiful, but she's also kind of like curvy, and she is the youngest of 3 sisters. And this begins in like, it's kind of like a wicked stepmother thing, except it's her mother, not a stepmother, and her mother thinks that she's weak and like undeserving of continuing the line. And so her mother tries to keep her from going to this like event that's usually where you can find your mate. Because your mate is the only one you can have children with. Yeah, that's how it goes. And yeah. And so her mother tries to do that. And then it turns out she escapes from this, and she has this connection with this, like, I like want to call him a gargoyle because he's like stony or like whatever. He's the gray guy in there, and they have this connection. And I don't know I don't know how to explain this book. Like, honestly, I read it, and the first half, like part 1 of the book, is them figuring out how to be together, which this is only 180 pages. It is a novella, and I can tell that it's a setup for more, because it's these two figuring out how to be together, and this happens in like medieval Scottish time. Like, it's in like 500 AD that they're getting together. And then the second half, they are mates and they're together, and every chapter skips ahead in time. So I wanted to love this so much. The cover is so beautiful, and I was so excited for it, but I don't really know what was going on in this book. Like, it has to do with them, because a lot of their people had been like turned to stone, and so through the years they're like collecting their people, because once you are in proximity to your mate, they can like awaken. And so they've been spending these hundreds of years collecting them and bringing them, like bringing these statues around each other, hoping that they'll be mates. And so I have a hunch that like the series coming, it will be some of these statues being mates and like waking up, and then we'll see what happens. I don't know. I don't know. It was charming in the first half of them falling for each other. There was some fun, like primal play. Like, it got a little like kinky when they'd be together, which was really cute. But I just ended up being kind of lost, and I was skimming by the end of it. So I gave it a 3-star, and it was a 3 on the spice scale, and the trigger warning for the abusive parent. So we'll move along to my favorite book that I read this week, which was The Tryst by Lauren Blakely. This was one that I was sent an influencer box of. It's already out. It came out on the 5th. And the audiobook is out for this too. I kind of want to listen to the audio because it's a full cast, like duet narration, but there's a full cast for this because Lauren Blakely is like the queen of audiobooks, and like she is like, she's just so good at this. Like, she's so good at it. At making sure that her books are ready for it so you can really enjoy it that way. But I was very excited for this when I got sent it because it is pitched as a single dad, forbidden romance, age gap, high heat, high emotions, and a strong, bold heroine. And it says, some men are just off limits like your ex-boyfriend's father. So, right? We're excited. We love ex-boyfriend's dad's romances. They're great. And I was totally in for that. Like, it was cool. I wasn't expecting how much I was going to love this, and I'll tell you why. Because it really felt like it was being written for the trope. Like, that's what I thought it was going to be. Like, based on the description of it, I was like, this is really going to be just, like, for the clicks, right? Like, what am I going to get out of it? I've read quite a few Lauren Blakely's. I enjoy them. They're not very memorable to me. They're great. Like, I love the audiobooks. Sometimes they're included in, the Audible Plus. So I'm not dissing that. We all have our authors that we just know that they're solid, but they don't necessarily like wow us or anything. And this isn't a 6-star read. Like, I'm not saying it was like the best thing ever, but I gave this a 5-star, and my reasons for this were, again, it has a typical kind of setup for an ex-boyfriend's dad, or like, it's called The Tryst. It did remind me of Tempt quite a bit in like, in how some of this is set up. So I like that. Tempt by Melanie Harlow. But yeah, they meet at this business conference. Our heroine is going by her business name. She's a makeup like influencer, and she's created an app, and so she's very successful. And so when she's at this, she's going by her business name, which is very close to her name, but like, she's also kind of she's a daughter of the industry. Like, her mom has a very famous like brand, and so she didn't want to get recognized for her mother. She wanted it to be for herself. And so she goes by a different name in the business world. Anyway, our hero, Nick, he gets asked to speak at this conference, like last minute, like he's there at the conference, but he gets asked to be the keynote speaker last minute. And the heroine sits in the front row and basically eye fucks him the whole time. And after his presentation, they meet each other at the bar and they go back to his hotel room and they have great sex all night. And he drives her to the airport and kisses her goodbye. And he gets her phone number. And then they, because they're like, we're not going to see each other again. But see, he knows what she doesn't know. He has a son who lives in New York. And so he kind of immediately starts looking for an excuse to go to New York because he just felt this crazy connection. And he's like, you know what? I can go there for business. I have business in New York sometimes. And I can visit my son. And maybe I can look this girl up. So meanwhile, our heroine is going to be starting a business venture and a nonprofit with an ex-boyfriend from college who nothing serious ever really happened. Like they only dated for like a month. He's 2 years younger than her. She's 23, he's 21. And they're just really good friends. Their mothers are in like the same social circle. So how they like meet up again and start discussing this is that she agrees to go on these blind dates or like get set up by her mom. And her mom's like, oh, you should go out with David. He's friends with it. And she's like, I dated him in college, right? Like it didn't work out. And her mom's like, please just go. So she goes. And her and David agreed to go because his mom talked him into it, but he actually has someone that he's seeing too. So they both like get talked into doing this. And then they strike up a conversation to do this business venture. And they're just really good friends. Like they're really great friends. And so for me, when Nick comes back into this picture, this was more like a friend's dad romance than like an ex's dad. Cause she is actually like the one night stand she has with Nick. She's actually a virgin that night. This whole series is called The Virgin Society. And I really like how it's handled too. Like Nick doesn't make a thing about it. He's just like, all right, I'm going to make sure you have a great time with this. And I love that for me, that I get to read a virgin not being put as like a pariah. She was like, I just didn't have time and I didn't trust people, but apparently I'm trusting this Tryst that I'm having because we have great anyway, whatever. So Nick ends up coming to town and first they like run into each other because she's leaving like a meeting with David and he's there to see David, and he never told her that he was a dad. He was a 17-year-old dad. So like he's only 38. His son is 21. And he just, when he had a tryst with a girl, he didn't tell. But the thing is, they've been texting each other for a while now. Like they've been like pen pal, through it, like texting buddies for a while now. And he never mentioned that he had a kid, and he didn't mention that he was in town, but he didn't want her to think he was coming to town just for her, let alone that he's now moving here to take over a branch of his company in New York. So he's going to be there. And now his son is working with her. And she's coming over to the penthouse all the time to meet with his son who's staying with him. So anyway, I've just spent so long explaining the setup of this. I'm so sorry. But I love it. I've told you, like, that's all the setup of this. Why I gave it 5 stars. Let's get to it. Everyone was so mature in this. So mature. Like, I understood their reasons for wanting to keep apart because they both love David. And Nick and David have an amazing relationship. Like, they have a great relationship. And he just feels like he'd be betraying him because he hasn't mentioned it at this point and now it's taking too long to do it. That kind of thing. And I loved that about it. Like, I really, really did. So we're going to move on. I've gushed about this enough. Of course, the sexual chemistry was great. This was steamy. It was good. There's some praise kink we got going on in here a little bit. He's very much an alpha mellow. Like, he is so thoughtful and kind. Like that, like Nick is so kind. He's so kind. He's willing to apologize. He also doesn't let his kid walk over him. Like, there's some times where like David is trying to give him shit and he's like, I did not raise you to act like this. Don't. And it isn't from an indignation point. It's him actually being like, we can talk about it because I fucked up, but we aren't going to do it this way. And is it wrong that I like that they're like so mature? I just loved it. And it was also spicy and great. So enough. I gave it 5 stars. Brilliant. Go listen to the audiobook. Go read it. It was 5 stars, 3.5 on the spice scale. And there's a trigger warning. Our heroine does have PTSD over how her father died. I won't spoil how that is, but it's in there. Okay. Now, I'm going to bind 2 of these together because I read them back to back and they really kind of blur. So these were the first one was on my TBR as, books from the PR companies that I wanted to get to. And so I started the Prep series by Elle Kennedy. Bloom Books had sent me both Misfit and Rogue when Rogue was coming out. And so these are new adult prep school novels. It's about this one academy for boys that's basically for troubled rich boys. And the way that our main hero in the first one ends up there, his name is RJ, is that his mom is getting remarried. And he has a new stepbrother named Fen, who is the same age as him and goes to Sandover Prep. And so his new stepdad gets him into this school. Fen is great. RJ, he's a hacker. He's a bad boy. He's been kicked out of lots of schools. He's basically biding his time until he can get out of there. But he does start to become really good friends with Fen. And when he gets to this school, he runs into the headmaster's daughter. So the headmaster of the boys' school has two daughters who are both high school age, of course. And they go to a girls' Catholic school that is kind of like a sister school. Well, no, because the boys' school isn't Catholic, but it's a girls' private school anyway. And Sloane is the oldest daughter. She's in the same grade as RJ, and they end up bumping into each other when she's going for a run, and he's out smoking pot, and they just start this connection, and he starts to fall for her, and we go from there. And then this one is kind of sold as, it says Euphoria meets Gossip Girl. Now, I've never watched Euphoria, but Gossip Girl I was addicted to when I was younger, actually when I was a college student. And so each one of the books, which again, I'm kind of talking about them as one. So this couple is RJ and Sloane, and then this is the younger sister, Casey and Fen. So these are their romances. In this one, we find out that Casey had actually been through something pretty scary like the year before, that caused her and her sister to have to switch schools. And we don't know the full everything that happened to her, because she almost died and she doesn't remember how she got in the situation that she got into. And we don't know. And so, yeah. And then also we have in this one, RJ, he of course comes up against some of the big kids on this campus and has to like kind of make his own place there, and also decide like if he cares enough to like establish himself here, like is he going to stay, like does he care about these people at all. So Sloane and RJ are the main couple in here, but we also have the POVs of some other guys. There's Silas, who is a friend of Sloane and Casey, and there is Lawson, who is definitely the Chuck Bass character. He's bisexual, chaos, always doing drugs. It's crazy. And yeah, so Sloane and RJ are the main couple in this one. This is about what they're going through. And then we find out some revelations at the end of Misfit that lead us into Rogue. And then this is the love story between Fen and Casey. And again, we still get Sloane and RJ's POV every now and then, as they are now like trying to unravel what these revelations mean about what happened to Casey and who did this to her and how we got here. As well as we're watching like Lawson spiral more and more, and Silas become a bad boy where he wasn't. So again, it very much like if you love Gossip Girl, these are going to be a trashy good time for you. They do still have some spice in it, not a lot. But I mean, Misfit definitely more than Rogue, just for how the stories happen. I don't want to like spoil that, but like for how the stories happen. Also there is swimming and soccer and track that fits throughout these, so lots of sports involved too. So I listened to both of the audio of these. These do have full cast narration. It's not duet narration, but there is like 6-7 different narrators. Like everybody has their own voice. Misfit, I gave 4 stars. Like I said, I had a great time with this, even though like it felt like really addicting. Like I enjoyed this. So this one was 4 stars. That had a 2 on the spice scale. Then I didn't love this one as much, but I was still like, I couldn't put it down. So I gave this one 3.5 stars, and this one is like a 1.5 on the spice scale. Both of these have lots of trigger warnings for neglectful and abusive parents. The drug use is kind of a big thing for me. You guys know that's a sensitive topic for me, and it may or may not be true at prep schools that there's just drugs flowing everywhere, but like in my fantasy worlds, I don't like seeing it because I just think of how much these kids are damaging themselves, and it hurts me to see that. But that's me being an old fuddy-duddy, and it might not bother everyone. And like, yeah. So these were fun. These were good. I want to know what happens next, for these trash fire of stories, but it's very compelling. It's very compelling in that way that like soap operas and like teen dramas like are. You know what I mean? Okay, then I read Beautiful Things by Emily Rath. I was so happy to read this. I actually buddy read this with my friend Rachel from Rachel Reads and Sings. I had been thinking about this book for a while because I had followed Emily on TikTok, and I really enjoyed her content on reverse harems and how she would explain the distinctions between MMF and MFM and MMMF and like what, when you use that label, like what you're setting up for the reader and what it means, and why, you know, you should label your blurbs carefully so you're not misleading people and then they feel disappointed because it feels like you didn't deliver. And this series is what she was writing when I like found her. So this is a Regency era reverse harem, and this is Second Sons book 1, and this is about our heroine Rosalie, who gets invited to stay at Alcott Hall. She gets invited by the Dowager Duchess, who has 2 sons, George and James. And George needs to find a husband, and she's going to be having a house party to try to force her son into picking a bride. And Rosalie is not there to become a bride, but our Dowager Duchess has a lot of guilt over Rosalie's mother. That's something you'll find out when you read this about her relationship with this old friend, she says, and why she wants to become a benefactress to Rosalie. She has some conditions. She's like, you can't marry any of the men here because there is like a family friend who's been made a son, and then there's another friend. So there's like all these men there, and she's like, you're not here to try to snipe one of these as a husband or make someone fall for you, but if you will be here and help me with the running this estate, I'll make you my ward, and you'll basically be the acting duchess here when I die, because the woman who's going to marry my son, she doesn't know anything about doing this. Anyway, you'll see that. That's fine by Rosalie, because Rosalie doesn't ever want to get married. She doesn't want someone to have that control over her. She wants to be free. She definitely has reasons for seeing that. So this isn't so much about a heroine like being a blue stocking. Like it isn't the tale of like, I want my rights for it. Like that's not the track we're going. She just does not want to be married because she's only seen it be bad. And she's like, whether I'm working for a living or whatever I have to do, no one's going to own me. And I appreciated that. That doesn't mean there aren't some men who are going to try to change her mind. So this one in itself, we don't get up to the full RH happening yet. This is part 1 in a duet. But, you know, we get introduced to everybody. We're building these connections. We have some spicy time with people. We're seeing how we feel about sharing each other and where we're going with that. And so it definitely is a building book for sure. A vast majority of the POVs are Rosalie, and so then having the other POVs split between the men, I feel like we didn't get to spend quite enough time with them that I wanted to. But I also, again, I feel like this was a really great setup, and we end on this like really great cliffhanger for this one. Like I'm definitely going into the next one soon. Rachel and I will hopefully start that on like Monday or Tuesday next week. And how I feel about this book fully will be determined on how it gets pulled out. But I really loved everyone we were introduced to. I do like the heroine. Her reasons for not wanting to get married, I understand. And there's some pretty crazy side characters in this as well. So I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars because the other thing I didn't even mention is Emily's writing is extremely compelling. Like seriously, this had such great flow. Sometimes some very beautiful things that even while listening to it on 2x speed would just stand out to me. And so I was just kind of mesmerized. This one also does have dual narration too. So there's a female narrator, and then it actually has the same male narrator as the Scarlet Scott did. So all of the gentlemen are narrated by that guy. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. And I definitely want to read more Emily Rath. I know she has a sports reverse harem. She has an Omegaverse, MM. I think they're MM. And then she also has a third book in this series that's a standalone, but it's the same people, like it's people from this world. That's going to be an MMF, and I want to read that. So yeah, I gave this 4.5 stars. Again, didn't have too much spice yet. It just had about a 2, but the chemistry is amazing, and I've heard the second one is where she just lets it all go, and it will be MMMF. Like there's going to be that. There isn't any more than like sharing in this one, but the next one is where we'll get to it. And that felt right. Like that, honestly, this has the beauty of a historical, like slow burn. Well, there's 3 men that we're slow burning with. And honestly, I think she balanced it really well, except me wishing I had a little more time. This is already pretty chunky, you know, like it's 447 pages. Like it's pretty chunky already. And the only thing, like I would have added maybe some more with the men, right? And then the very last book I want to mention was Luxuria by Colette Rhodes. This was recommended to me by my friend Ashley Mack, who is Total Sass Reads on Instagram. She's also an author. She showed up on my channel quite a few times. I love her stuff. And this was her recommendation for my 12 Recs from 12 Friends challenge, which I'm actually doing very good with. I'm halfway done with it already. And this one is a monster arranged marriage romance. So we have our heroine, Ophelia, who is a monster hunter. Now, monster hunter is more like a breed of people, like a type of people. It's not necessarily like she isn't a hunter currently. It's not what she does. But it is like what you can be. And then there are these different monsters. Specifically in this one, we have shades. And so our hero is the king of the shades. And she gets asked to be in a political arranged marriage with him. And the thing is, Ophelia has always had secret desires about being fucked by a monster. Like, honestly, she's done drawings of it. She has dreams about it. And so she's actually pretty excited that she has a legit reason to be fucking a monster. So she gets taken to the shade realm. So they have this marriage. And then her husband promptly, like, ignores her. And she's kind of put off by this because she was like, I finally have a chance to fuck a monster, and he doesn't want to. Now, the thing about these shades, the way that the shades get energy is to feed off of fear. So part of the peace treaty that they put in is they're only allowed to feed in like certain places, and then they won't be hunted by the hunters, but they feed off of fear. So they'll go to the human realm. You know, it reminded me of like Monsters Inc., where like they would go and, you know, scare people, and then they feed off the fear, and then they come back. And if you know, there are certain shades that are sent out to do that. And once they're filled up, like they're able to take in extra energy. And when they come back, they can release their energy into like these holding tanks or like whatever. And it can be shared with the shades. So they can feel and smell fear, right? And the thing is like our hero, when he gets married to Ophelia, he doesn't want her fear, and he just smells this intoxicating scent off of her, which is what fear usually smells like. But what he doesn't know, and what we become aware of pretty soon, is that when you find your fated mate, it isn't their fear that feeds you, it's their pleasure. So he's smelling this intoxicating scent off of her, and it's her being super horny. And so when they do have a couple of run-ins initially, she's getting really hot by thinking about fucking her monster husband, and he's smelling the scent, and he's like, she's terrified because he's never smelt this on someone else. And when we finally have this head-to-head that she's like, why won't you fuck me? And he's like, I don't want to fuck you when you're scared. Like, it makes me uncomfortable. And she's like, I am not scared. I don't know how to tell you how much I am not scared. So that leads them then to start looking, like the hero asks some of his people to start doing some research on this. Because this has never happened that they've known of. Why is there this fated mating between this you know, hunter woman and the shade, and it's doing all these amazing things in the shade realm. Like color is coming back to certain things, and when they have sex for the first time, the amount of energy that he absorbs, and then he goes to like put it in the tank because he's like, I have so much excess energy from all of her pleasure. It could feed vast amounts of shades for ages off of their pleasure, which maybe we need to start finding the shades fated mates instead of having to go and fear people. That's what I assume we're going to do. The second book I think is already out, and I definitely do want to read it. I did get like kind of bored sometimes. Part of it is this happens with the book that I read at night before I fall asleep, because I tend to fall asleep while I'm reading it. And it doesn't necessarily mean it was boring, but it also has that, it has a miscommunication trope at the end that I rolled my eyes so hard. So I kind of knocked a star off because I was like, oh, really? Like, people, really? Like, so I knocked off a star, but I had a great time with it, and it definitely has a lot of kinks we'll get to in a second. So I gave it 4 stars. It's a 4 on the spice scale. It has primal play, nodding, breathing, biting, lots of fluids, all the good things. So lots of fun, spicy stuff in here, and I definitely look forward to the next book. I think it's going to be the heroine's sister, so we'll see. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this. I hope you have liked the video by now. Please subscribe to the channel. I do have a playlist of over 250 different rec videos, so if there is any kind of romance you're looking for, I probably got a video on it or have some recommendations for it, so check that out. Thank you so much for watching, my friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye.